The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today. Teresa, welcome to the journey.
Thank you.
And Teresa Reeverts. And could you spell your last name?
Reeverts.
Okay. And you, what position do you have here at the Rockford Rescue Mission?
I'm the Director of Support Services.
Okay.
So for our program, either our crisis program or our recovery program.
Gotcha. Okay. And how long have you been in this role?
Oh, heavens. 5 years.
Okay, all right. Well, Teresa, welcome to the journey. And the journey is a show that just brings individuals on to talk about stories of transformation, about individuals who have opportunities to, with setbacks, how do they fail forward? How do they recreate themselves when setbacks happen? And we just got done doing an hour talk for some of the parents here. And they did a phenomenal job of interacting, and we talked about resiliency. We talked about the concept of SISU, this how do we develop resiliency not only in ourselves but then also for our young people and as a parent. And you got a chance to sit in with that. And so tell us a little bit about when you think of resiliency for yourself, and then think of resiliency in your own life, and then how resiliency is like with some of the individuals that come to Rockford Rescue Mission. Tell us a little bit about how resiliency plays a part in that.
Resiliency is really important for designing the kind of life that you want. I didn't grow up in a real positive atmosphere. In fact, it was largely negative. And I said I wanted to go to college. My parents or my mom said I wasn't smart enough. So I got a job and I paid for my way to go to college. Okay. That's kind of resiliency. I was angry, but thank God my anger got turned the right way so that I could. My goal was to work so people would never hurt like I did.
Sure. Okay. And you saw that there would be some benefit of getting more education.
Oh, absolutely.
To give you more options. And even though you had, in this particular case, a pretty important person in your life, your mom, or at least having a role that could be influential in that, had doubts and had this negative impression. So I think that's a great point of that sometimes when we have situations happen, our response to it is anger, and we can harness that anger and that energy that comes from the anger to help motivate us. And I think of a time period when I was starting KP, and there was this idea that there were some people that said that this couldn't happen, and that no social worker had done this independently. And I remember very much, not only was there an aspect of that, that brought up some fear, but there was also an aspect that pushed that fear, as well as I want to show that it can be different. That when I felt like I didn't want to do something or I felt tired, I would use that energy to push through. Yep.
Absolutely.
And not just put the books down too soon or whatever it may be. So with the individuals that utilizes the service here, how do you see resiliency as being a part of the program, part of something that you guys can offer here?
Well, first of all, with our recovery program, it's a 9 to 12 month program on site, so it's an extended program.
Okay.
It's awesome. We are also one of the only places that children can come with their moms, so that's amazing. So that if a family is intact, they can remain intact. Okay. Other than that, we do work with moms to overcome legal issues with their children, if there are some. The resiliency, when you have 9 to 12 months to work with people, that's really awesome because you have a long time to pour into them and watch them be transformed. Well, our crisis department is a department that because they're so transient, they didn't get a lot of attention. And a year and a half ago, we started offering classes for them. So I teach boundaries, I teach codependency, I teach purpose-driven life, and I teach, get a grip. It's on emotional intelligence, but I kind of wrote it myself to fit. And all of those things are to help these people build resiliency.
Sure.
To understand maybe why they made the mistakes they did before, but that they don't have to make them again. They can go on.
Right. Okay. So when you think of in this program, so men and women, they could become part of this program, and they'd sign up for it, and it could be for 9 months, it could be up to 12 months, and so they're getting a multitude of different services, as well as obviously food and shelter, and it's really kind of an opportunity to kind of like a boot camp probably isn't the right term for it, but maybe there's elements to that.
That's kind of a good thing, because along with all the personal development classes, we do have the back to work classes. So we try to teach them the skills they need to be successful, and they define their success. We don't define their success.
Okay. So it's very much determined by where they're at or where they would like to go. But I imagine there's also some coaching that goes along.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes people may have a ceiling of how far they think they can go, or a grandiosity of that may not be necessarily within the realm of.
And that's a difficult situation.
So I think there would be a balance between the two, right? Of how do you help them see more than they may see, as well as at the same time of what would be some of the tangible things, the other things that may get put in place.
Right.
So when you think of over the years that you've been doing this, you think of a story, and with no names, of course, but think of a story of someone who took full embrace of the program, and then you heard about them a year later or 2 years later, and then because I think we hear about what the program can do, but we don't necessarily always hear the stories about someone who took the program and fully embraced it,
expanded,
and then after they left, they continue growing with it. Any stories come to mind?
I actually have two. I've been here for 12 years. I started as a case manager. And then I was supervisor of the women's life recovery. And my first client was the toughest girl I'd ever met, being from little old Belvedere. She was hard as nails. She'd already been in prison 26 years of her life. And so she definitely was unmedicated when I met her, and that was a necessity to work with her because she wasn't reasonable. But she finally did come around, and she seen my way, and she was compliant with her mental health medicine. Well, then her dreams and aspirations started to kind of come up again. She had tucked those away so long ago. She wanted to go to Northern. She got an associate's degree when she was in jail. She wanted to go to Northern, and she wanted to go into counseling. Okay, you've got this long list of felonies, you've got this, these are some big hurdles. Well, she has her master's degree, and she's counseling in Tennessee.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Memphis, Tennessee. So
she was able not only to, with the help of some assistance, getting on the right medication to allow her to work with that. She was able to get her bachelor's degree from NIU, and then where she get her? Do you know where she got her master's?
George Washington. Is that right? I think it is. I went to her.
Was it local?
It's in Wisconsin. Southern Wisconsin. Something Washington.
Is it Williams Bay, Aurora University?
Yes.
Williams Bay. Yeah. That's where my son goes to school right now.
So anyway, she has just lived this life you could never have imagined, because she'd spent so many years in prison and in youth facilities before she went to adult prison. So
interesting.
So she's living this beautiful life. It's amazing. The other one is very similar. I met her when we taught in jail, and I just felt that there was something different about her, and I said, come and live with us over at the mission. When you get out of here, see what you can do. Well, she wanted to also go into counseling, and she has her master's degree now.
Oh, really?
And she's counseling in the area.
Okay, interesting. Do you know where she's counseling here in the area?
I I don't know the facility that she's at.
Okay, gotcha.
But I have one that's at Swedes,
okay.
and I think the other's at Rosecrans. So there's actually 3 girls in our area. So it's really exciting to see them take the opportunities. I mean, with my first girl that I told you about, we had to petition all the schools inside the college to get them to accept her grades, because an associate's degree in prison isn't like the associate's degree you and I would get at Rock Valley. So we had to do a lot of work, but she continued to push, and she never let go of her dream.
Interesting. And I think there is, again, those are, huge, right? I mean, it's hard for individuals that don't have certain obstacles, let alone a bunch of red tape that they have to climb through to get a master's degree. And being able to push through and continue to stay focused in spite of being discouraged, that is a huge aspect, because it is so. There's a temptation that when we want to do the right thing, for our lives and follow that dream, but when the doors don't open, we somehow, well, maybe it's not meant to be.
Exactly.
And
give up too easy.
Yeah, and I think there is an aspect where we want to make sure that we continue knowing that it may not be, it may not come in the timeline that we want it, but it still has that potential of being able to change our life, being able to move into a place where we can change our stars. So, if there's anything else you could tell us about the program and what things that you offer. I've heard about offering GD classes, offering back to work, offering opportunities to re-engage with their children if need be, from a legal standpoint, if that's necessary, and some basic skill stuff. And then is there counseling here as well?
We do. We have to refer out for counseling. We would sure love to have somebody on site one day a week to hear people, because most all of our people need some counseling. And it's extra taxing on us to get people to their appointments, but it's important. If they're really going to recover from life's traumas, they have to get the counseling. Right.
It's part of the healing process.
Part of the healing.
Yeah. So I think there is that element that because there's been trauma that they've encountered, that you can take care of basic skills, you can take care of certain things, but at some point, if those emotional wounds and trauma don't get healed, then there's a risk of everything unfolding again.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless they know how to deal with life as life comes, which dealing that initial hurt or those wounds and then building on that's so important, because then they begin to learn to handle life. We have one gentleman who experienced trauma. He was engaged in one of our programs here, and he did a work therapy program with a heating agency business in town, and he still works there. He's now a supervisor. He, had he not had that healing, he might have picked up again. Sure.
So one other question regarding yourself. So you've been doing this, working at this particular agency for 12 years. What things do you do to make sure that you keep your light bright? What things do you do for your own self-care?
Well, I have to be engage with my church and Bible study and daily devotions with God, because that's where my strength comes from. Because there's a lot of days that I go home emotionally drained. I have a really good husband who's a great sounding partner, that I can tell him, never names, but of course situations that I can just express, because the tragedies that you hear all day are tough. It's tough to hear those. So I have that. And then I have a good group of girlfriends, because sometimes girls support is what you need.
Sure. So regarding the spiritual piece, so tell us a little bit, just briefly, about how does the spiritual piece actually work for Teresa? How does it actually work for you from a standpoint of allow your light? Because a lot of people will hear that and they don't necessarily know what you mean. That you lean into your daily devotions and you lean. How does that refuel you?
I have to be in the Word, because my strength comes from God. Very basically, Scripture says, In Matthew 25:35-42, whatever you've done for the least of these, you've done to me. And when I read that as a young adult and recovering from my own issues, I went, okay, God, you're right. That's how I can serve you, by taking care of other people. But I am no good to anybody if I'm not whole myself.
Okay.
The love and the forgiveness that you see throughout the scriptures is another thing that fuels me. I could have really got stuck in the bad things that I did as a teenager, and I could have let that define me, and I could have let that drive my adult life. But no, I don't, because I've been forgiven. And I want everybody to know that they have been forgiven.
So part of that grounding process, right, is that because of what you've gotten from it, and then you go back to get refueled, to reminded, again, this idea of grounding, and going back into that space is a way of you refueling, and also, you didn't say it, but this is kind of what I heard, is then you're able to also keep it in perspective.
Yes.
So that when you hear those stories,
I keep focused on what I know God called me to do.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate, because I know a lot of times our listeners will want to go a little bit deeper into when we say things, and sometimes we'll say things, and I know what you mean, but I'm always curious about what, if we dig down just a little bit deeper, what does that actually mean for you, and how does that resonate? Because I know for me, I need to do those same types of things to get grounded, to recognize that what I'm doing is there's something going on that's bigger than me, that's involved. I just have to do my part.
Absolutely.
And that I have to, meditation and praying and specifically certain Bible stories help me to get grounded with that. For me, it's more those stories tend to ground me more, but that isn't necessarily that I can't benefit from other things. As we were walking around before the ladies came in for our talk, knew we were going to be talking about perseverance and resiliency, and then we saw your poster behind me on perseverance from James, and so that was a nice reminder that we were in the right place.
Right. If I didn't have a prayer life, if I didn't have a faith life, there's absolutely no way I could do this work.
Sure.
Absolutely no way.
Well, and there's a huge key when I do talks on self-care and secondary trauma, and there is that element of, in that self-care, there's a spiritual component to it, because we need to know that we're doing that. There's a bigger purpose here, because if we don't, we get tied up into the stories and we start drowning in the stories.
Absolutely, and that would be so easy to do, because we have 180 people on site today. Those are a lot of stories. It's a lot of trauma.
Yeah, very much so. Well, Teresa, thank you very much for the work that you're doing and the leadership that you're bringing to your staff, as well as the vision that you have with the part that you're playing regarding the recovery program here. If there was one last thing that you would want to leave the listeners with, what would you want to share?
Keep pressing forward. Absolutely keep pressing forward, because God has a greater plan for you. Know that He's there. He's walking with you. But keep pressing forward to get the blessings He has in store for you.
Nice. And we were talking about that earlier, about avoiding the distraction and the temptation of the easy path, and to take the risk to follow the narrow path or the harder path. So thank you very much for being on the show, and thank you for joining us today and learning just a little bit more about what we're doing, or what's being done here at the Rockford Rescue Mission, to see how transformation is happening for this particular group of individuals, and at that grassroots level. And we look forward to being with you next week. Thank you.